Texas survives and advances in the SEC tournament. Have the Longhorns done enough to punch their ticket to the NCAA tournament? We'll discuss on a special live edition of Locked On Longhorns. Intro.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. You are locked on to the Texas Longhorns. I'm your host, BK Brad Kellner, Texas grad, Austin native, and longtime sports radio host here in the Lone Star State. Thank you for making Locked On Longhorns your first listen every single day, and thank you for tuning in to this special live edition of Locked On Longhorns. Of course, we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Please like, please subscribe, please comment, and tell your Longhorn friends about Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Ready for a stress-free tax season and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to turbotax.com today and get matched with your tax expert. The Texas Longhorns held off Vanderbilt 79-72 in the first round of the SEC tournament in Nashville. The Longhorns were in control for most of this game. Texas was up by 15 at halftime. They pushed the lead up to 18 at one point early on in the second half. The Longhorns really dominated most of this game. They were up double digits for more than 20 minutes of today's contest in Nashville. It's a quadrant one victory for the Longhorns, and boy, did they need it. A loss today would have all but ended Texas's season and maybe would have all but ended Rodney Terry's tenure as the head coach for the Texas men's team. But instead, they live to play another day, and the Horns will get another chance to play Texas A&M. The rubber match as the two teams split in the regular season, but a huge, huge victory for the Longhorns. And it has me, and I think it has a lot of Texas fans wondering, where was that? Why didn't we see that in the 18-game regular season SEC schedule? Why did it take until this true must-win game to see that type of energy level, that type of effort, that type of desperation for this Texas team? We didn't see that against Oklahoma on Saturday. We didn't see that against Georgia the previous Saturday. We didn't see that from Arkansas. I mean, we really didn't see any of that in February and March. And finally, it shows up. Now, better late than never, I guess, but it might be too little, too late for the Horns. But at least they gave you some belief, and at least they kept their slim tournament hopes alive. There's a gnat flying around, and it is absolutely killing me right now. But they found a way to get it done. But again, watching that game, especially watching that first half where Texas was in total control, just wondering, why did we not see more of that during the regular season? Look, it was 40 minutes of damn near dominance. I mean, Texas was in control. I know things got a little tougher than any of us wanted down the stretch. Vandy cut it to 7 with about a minute and a half to go. Texas was playing stupid. They were fouling way too much, which that's the one thing you can't do when you're playing with a lead late in the game. You cannot stop the clock and give the other team free points. Texas did that, which allowed the Commodores to get back into the game. And Texas also missed a couple of free throws as well to keep the door slightly ajar for Vandy. But there was never, and I don't know about y'all, but there was never a moment in that game where I thought Texas was going to lose. It's pretty funny. The warm-ups that the Texas players wear on the bench say nothing easy. And that feels very appropriate for this Texas team because nothing has been easy for them, and they really didn't make this one as easy as it could have been. But again, there was never really a moment where I thought Texas was going to lose today. They just did too much right on both ends of the floor to keep Vanderbilt at bay. And yeah, it got the 7, but again, it never got to within 2 possessions, so I felt good about Texas there. By the way, if you're watching this live, comment in the live chat. Texas Rocks is here, says, not good news. We don't need Terry saving his job. Well, Texas Rocks, if you want a change to be made atop the Texas men's basketball program, I've got good news. The Longhorns haven't done anything yet. All this win does is gives them another opportunity to win another game tomorrow. And look, if they do that, that might be enough to get them into the dance. I don't know if it will be. They still might have to beat Tennessee in the third round of the SEC tournament. But even then, I'm not sure that's enough. Part of me thinks that RT's fate is already sealed and the hay is already in the barn. And I know Chris Del Conte has had some conversations behind the scenes about who could be Rodney Terry's replacement. So, look, I don't think you're alone. I think there are a few Longhorn fans out there that are rooting against Texas right now just to make sure that the Horns make a coaching change once this season comes to an end. If you are one of those fans, then again, I think you're still safe. Like if Texas goes out there and loses to A&M tomorrow, the Horns aren't making the tournament. And I think that means Rodney Terry isn't going to be allowed to continue coaching here. Now, if you're still here, Texas Rocks, I'll ask you, you're going to be rooting against Texas A&M tomorrow? I guess it's one thing to root against Texas against a team like Vanderbilt, but the Aggies, your biggest rival, you want to lose to them? I know long term you might think it's better, but I can't think of too many instances. Really, I can't think of one instance in my life where I've ever rooted for Texas A&M. I really don't think I've ever rooted for Texas A&M to beat Texas in any sport at any moment. So I do wonder if the portion of Longhorn fans who want change, again, are going to be rooting against Texas, against A&M tomorrow. But they found a way to get it done. And you wonder if Tournament Terry is a thing. Remember, RT won the Big 12 tournament in 2023. Of course, Texas made the deep run to the Elite Eight that season. Rodney Terry won a tournament game last year, so it's 4 tournament wins in 2 seasons. He's 1 win away from getting Texas back to their 3rd straight tournament. The last Longhorn coach to make it to 3 straight NCAA tournaments was Rick Barnes from 2010 to 2012. So it's been more than a decade that a Texas coach has been able to go to 3 straight big dances. Again, job's not finished. Texas ain't there yet, but a win tomorrow might get the Longhorns there. And Rodney Terry, both at Texas and at his previous stops as a head coach, has a reputation of having his teams play their best basketball at the end of the season. Didn't see it in February at the end of the regular season, but maybe we're going to see it in Nashville. Desperation's a hell of a drug, y'all. Vanderbilt was already in. Talked about this a little bit on this morning show. Vanderbilt was already in the dance. They didn't need this game today. Texas needed this game today. It's going to be a similar situation tomorrow. A&M's already in. I mean, they're playing for seeding right now, but a quick look at the bracket matrix, I'm seeing the Aggies as a 3 seed. So they are already in the NCAA tournament. Their fate is sealed. They know they're going to be dancing. Texas still needs to win another game to get in. So you wonder if that desperation that we saw from the Longhorns today, playing against a team that doesn't have nearly as much on the line, is going to carry over to tomorrow's game. I'm not saying Vanderbilt didn't try. They didn't rest their players or, go easy on Texas or anything like that. But again, it's just human nature at times that kicks in. When one team is desperate and they're playing for a lot more than the other team, sometimes you see the energy and effort levels match that. When Texas played Vandy in the regular season, they weren't hustling the way that they hustled today. They weren't crashing the boards the way they were today. They weren't diving on the floor for loose balls. They weren't winning those 50-50 battles. They weren't doing any of those things. But today, in a game that mattered more for one team, that one team showed up. Really impressed with the Texas defense today. I mean, Vanderbilt averaged 80 points per game coming in. They had 26 in the first half. That's the fewest points they've scored in any first half all season long. They didn't even get to 20 until there were like 2 minutes and 20 seconds left in the first half. I mean, Texas was making Vandy work for everything on the offensive end of the floor. And again, going back to that regular season matchup, I keep saying in Nashville. Obviously, both games were in Nashville, but on Vandy's campus, Vandy had 17 offensive rebounds in that Texas loss. Texas was plus 10 on the boards through the first 20 minutes when they built that 15-point lead. They didn't give Vandy second chance opportunities. They didn't give them anything easy. Texas did a great job on the low block as well. The Longhorns were dominant in the low post, which is the exact opposite of what happened in the first game. I mean, Jalen Carey got whatever he wanted in the regular season matchup. He was a non-factor today. Arthur Kaluma did a great job on the low block. Caden Shedrick did a great job on the low block. Texas wasn't giving up those easy baskets. They weren't giving up those second chance opportunities that absolutely destroyed them the first time they played the Commies. I don't know if I could say Commies. I feel like that's a bad abbreviation for Commodores. I don't know if they're going to like that one too much. But Vandy couldn't get out and run Texas wasn't turning the ball over on offense, so the Longhorns were able to set their defense. They kept everything in front of them. You heard Jay Billis talking about that a ton on the telecast. That was the difference in the game. And we'll get to, Trey Johnson. We'll get to Jordan Pope. We'll get to Arthur Kaluma. We'll get to the guys who really showed up in the box score in a moment. I got to give some love to Kendall Weaver, who ended the game with 0 points today. Not often am I going to give shout-outs to guys who don't score. Kendall Weaver was 0 for 2, but he was really impactful in his 18 minutes. He was terrible against Oklahoma on Saturday, understandably so. His first game back after missing 15 straight with that hip flexor injury. He looked a little lost, and he looked a little slow against the Sooners. I wasn't sure what to expect from Kendall Weaver today. I didn't know if he was going to play, but he made a difference in that first half, especially the defense, the rebounding. I think he ended up with, 6 rebounds, also 2 assists, a steal, and a block in those 18 minutes. So despite not putting up a singular point, Kendall Weaver made a difference. And look, I'm not going to sit here and act like Texas would be a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament if they had Kendall Weaver all year. But I think Kendall Weaver could have been the difference in 1 or 2 of the close losses that the Longhorns had in the regular season. Having him back right now, again, maybe too little too late, but it's better late than never. He made a difference in that first half, and if he can give that type of performance off the bench tomorrow against Texas A&M, be that spark plug that he was at the end of last season in the NCAA tournament, then that's going to help Texas's chances to pull off the upset against the Aggies tomorrow afternoon. So a definite shout out to Kendall Weaver for what he was able to do. All right, plenty more on this game. Big bounce back from Trey Johnson. And God, it was great to see the supporting cast show up. You can't win. As good as Trey Johnson is, SEC Freshman of the Year, the leading scorer in this conference, you need more than just one guy to show up if you are going to beat good teams in the month of March. Texas got a ton of big-time performances. We'll talk about that. We'll also give you the latest with the bracket matrix, where the Longhorns sit, what Joe Lunardi thinks about Texas's chances to make the NCAA tournament. That's all coming up right here on Locked on Longhorns. But first, a quick shout out to the sponsor for today's video, Factor. If you're looking to optimize your nutrition this year, if you're just looking to make life a little bit easier on yourself this year, our friends at Factor can help, because they make eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh and never frozen, and they're ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. They've got 40 options every single week. You can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. They've got you covered, plus smoothies, breakfast, grab-and-go snacks, stuff to keep you full and satisfied all day long. Cooking sucks. It takes too much time. It's a mess, and the food usually doesn't taste as good as you want it. At least that's my problem. Factor takes all of the stress out of meal planning, all of the stress out of cooking, and there shouldn't be any stress when you're eating. It should be fun. Factor does that. It's great food in just minutes. Eat smart with Factor. Check out their website, factormeals.com/lockedoncollege, 50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LOCKEDONCollege, 50 off at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege, 50 off. Again, to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Thanks to our friends at Factor for sponsoring today's video. All right, back here on Locked on Longhorns, your team every day, a special live edition of the show. Texas Rocks, appreciate you commenting. Appreciate you chiming in. If you are watching this live, feel free to comment in the live chat. If you're watching this after the fact, feel free to comment below with your thoughts on this win over Vandy, and also your thoughts on Rodney Terry and what you think Texas can do against Texas A&M tomorrow. But again, Trey Johnson, great bounce back for him. He was 0 for 14 against Oklahoma on Saturday. Far and away the worst performance of the year for him. He bounced back 19 points. Wasn't the most efficient shooting night that he's ever had, but he hit some big shots early on to help Texas build that lead. And look, he averages 20 a game. He gives you 19. That helps, but it can't be a one-man show. Texas needs contributions from its other players. And that's been the problem way too often for Texas this year. It was just Trey Johnson and nobody else. It's like everybody was just looking for number 20 to do something, and that was enough. Didn't help Texas in the regular year. Today, how about Tremont Mark? 19 points for him. Got to the free throw line 11 times. I will give Rodney Terry some credit for this. I have been as critical on RT as just about anybody on the Texas beat throughout the course of this season, but credit where credit is due. The change to make Tremont Mark more of a point guard really worked. Now, Jordan Pope started the game as the point guard. He picked up 2 early fouls, so maybe that forced RT's hand, but still, throughout the game, even when Jordan Pope came back in, Tremont Mark was handling the ball for most of this game. He's not the best facilitator in the world. He only had 2 assists, but the Texas offense looked a lot crisper and a lot smoother today than it did on Saturday against Oklahoma, than it did in a lot of Texas's games late in the regular season when Julian Larry and Jordan Pope were running the show at the point. Julian Larry only played 4 minutes in this game today, y'all. He was bad early, and RT liked what he saw from Tremont Mark when he was handling the rock, and he left him in. And he left Julian Larry on the bench. And I will credit RT for that. That is a bold move. If it doesn't work, it blows up in your face, and maybe it costs you your job. But the trust he put in Tremont Mark, it was a different decision. It was a different look. It was something we haven't really seen all season long. But today, it worked, and I think Texas should at least try it tomorrow. Now, if it doesn't work, you got to adjust. You got to mix things up. But I liked what I saw enough from Tremont Mark when he was handling the rock today. That guy could actually break a full court press, which was nice to see. Julian Larry, going back to that Mississippi State game, not so much. So love what Tremont Mark did. Another great performance for Jordan Pope. He's a streaky shooter, and unfortunately, most of those streaks have been bad for Texas. But this is a guy who averaged close to 18 a game at Oregon State a season ago. It's been very underwhelming at Texas, only averaging about 9 to 10 a game this season. He gave you 21 against OU. He gives you 14 today, whatever it is. If you can get something like that from Jordan Pope, you've got a chance tomorrow. Arthur Kaluma gave you 11 and 7. If you can get something like that from him, you've got a shot to beat Texas A&M. A&M's a lot better than Vanderbilt, and A&M usually plays well in this building. They were a lower seed last year and made it all the way to the SEC tournament final a year ago. So they play well in this building. They're a better team than you. They're going to be a 3 seed. You're fighting for your NCAA tournament life. It's a tougher test, can't combine those words, against them than it was against Vandy. But again, if you get those others to step up, then you've got a shot. It can't just be one person who gets the job done. Now the bracket matrix. I just refreshed it. I don't know how many brackets have been updated since that game went final like an hour ago. By the way, that game took forever. That was a game that was supposed to start at 2:30 Central and end at 4:30 Central. Neither of those things happened. A quick look at the bracket matrix. This has not been updated since the game, but before tip-off today, 94 brackets on this website that compiles every credible bracketologist on the internet. Only one of those 94 had Texas in. The question is, when we look at this page later tonight or look at it tomorrow morning, where does Texas sit? Joe Lunardi of ESPN currently has Texas as his second team out. He had them as his third team out before the game. They moved up one slot. Now they are the second team out, sitting one spot behind North Carolina. And that's bad news. Like, if you want Texas to make the dance, you better hope North Carolina loses tomorrow. Tar Heels beat Notre Dame today, but you want them to lose relatively early in the ACC tournament. Texas has a better resume than UNC. I think today was Texas's 6th Quadrant 1 win. Carolina has 1. I mean, the ACC has been ass this year. They really should change the C's to S's. That's how bad it's been outside of Duke. But Carolina's a blue blood in basketball. Like, the committee will do whatever they possibly can to get a team like UNC in the dance, even if they probably don't deserve it. So if you want Texas to hear its name called on Selection Sunday, you better hope North Carolina loses, because at least in Joe Lunardi's eyes, those two teams are like right in the same spot right now. Indiana's another team that's there. That's a blue blood program. They don't have the same cachet that Carolina does, but still, it's a big basketball team. It's a big basketball market. They're going to probably try to get those teams in the dance if they can. So if you're Texas, yeah, I mean, you got to obviously win tomorrow to stay in that conversation, but you not only have to be rooting for your own team, you got to be rooting against some of the other bubble teams as well. And of course, you hope there are no major bid stealers from some of these smaller conference tournaments that are going on right now. So still more work to be done. The question becomes, First question is, can Texas beat A&M? The second question is, will that be enough in the eyes of the bracketologists, and more importantly, in the eyes of the selection committee, or do the Longhorns need a win against Rick Barnes in Tennessee on Friday? I don't think they do. I don't think they should, but I'm not the one who calls the shots here, unfortunately. If I could, I'd put Texas as a 1 seed. I don't think they're going to let me do that. So the Longhorns survive and advance. They find a way to get it done. We'll stay live for a few more minutes to respond to any of y'all's comments. If you are here watching, number one, thank you. Number two, please hit me in the chat with your thoughts. Of course, tomorrow morning, we'll talk more about Texas and Texas A&M. We'll go in depth and give you a preview of what the Longhorns need to do to win their second consecutive game against Texas A&M. Boy, what a game in Austin these two teams played at the end of January. Texas was down by 22 in the second half. Somehow, some way, came back to win. Tremont Mark had the game winner in the final seconds. That was the biggest win of the year for the Longhorns. That win is the reason why we're still talking about Texas as a bubble team. We'll see if they can get it done. We'll preview that. We'll have the latest from the bracket matrix as well coming up tomorrow. But I was impressed by what Texas did. Vanderbilt, you knew they were going to come throwing some punches right out of halftime, basically playing a home game. They got smoked in the first half. They looked slow in the first 20 minutes. You knew they weren't just going to bow out and just Howard out of this game and not even put up a fight. They threw some punches, but Texas kept that lead in double figures until there were like 2 minutes left when the game was pretty much over. It was an impressive showing by Texas. I was a little bit nervous at halftime. I think a lot of Longhorn fans were pretty nervous at halftime that things were going to go awry in the second half. Hell, regular season game between Texas and Vandy. Texas was up by, I think, 10 with like 13 minutes left and lost that game. So a 15-point lead at halftime. If you watch the first game between these two, you were maybe a little bit nervous there. You're still squirming in your seat. But Texas, again, they never did anything that led me to believe that they were going to lose this game. A lot of it happened on the defensive end of the floor. That was great to see, and they're going to need it. That physicality, that toughness that they showed today, they're going to need to bring that for all 40 minutes. You play Buzz Williams, that is a hard hat, lunch pail type of game. Ain't no white-collar stuff going to fly tomorrow. You got to bring that blue-collar mentality and that work ethic. You got to be able to go to work against one of the most physical teams and the best offensive rebounding team in all of college basketball. But thank God we're talking about at least one more game. Because if Texas lost today, season's over. You're wondering about whether or not the Horns are going to accept an NIT invitation. You're wondering about Rodney Terry. Does he get fired on the tarmac or do they let him coach the NIT? All of those conversations that I wasn't ready to have, thankfully, we don't have to have them. We can push them off for at least 24 more hours. That's going to do it for this live post-game edition of Locked On Longhorns. Don't forget, tomorrow morning, we'll talk more about the A&M game. We'll give you the latest with bracketology. We'll talk some Texas football as well. Plenty more to come right here on Locked On Longhorns. But hey, we really appreciate y'all making Locked On Longhorns your first listen every morning, and also this listen right now. And if you're looking for something else to tune into, check out the Locked On College Basketball Show with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. Hey, it's conference tournament week. Selection Sunday is 4 days away. Is my math right on that? 4 days away. If you want to be the smartest person in the group text, smartest person at the water cooler at work, just the smartest person you know, make sure you stay informed with the best college basketball show that you can find. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again for tuning in to today's video. Thanks to TurboTax for sponsoring. Thanks to Factor as well. See y'all tomorrow. Until then, horns up, mic's off. See y'all next time on Locked On Longhorns.